The story of Nate Jacobs from the television series Euphoria is a difficult and unsettling one, but at its core, it is a story about a boy and his father, and the terrible, invisible inheritance that can pass between them. To understand Nate, his explosive anger, his need for control, and the violence he unleashes on everyone around him, we must first understand the man who made him, his father, Cole Jacobs. This isn't about blaming one person for the actions of another, but rather tracing the clear psychological lines of what experts call identified aggression, a process where a victim, to survive, internalizes and later mimics the very abuse that wounded them. Nate's entire life is a brutal performance, a prison of masculinity built not from his own desires, but from shattered pieces of his father's secret life and the harsh, demanding expectations that life created. Cole Jacobs presents, on the surface, the image of perfect, traditional success. He is a wealthy businessman, a family man, a pillar of a certain kind of American masculinity, strong, stoic, providing, and in charge. But this image is a meticulously constructed lie. Cal's true self is hidden away in a secret vault of recorded sexual encounters with other men, often much younger, encounters marked by a confusing mix of desire, dominance, and self-loathing. For Nate, the discovery of these tapes as a young child was a world-shattering event. He didn't just stumble upon pornography, he stumbled upon the catastrophic gap between his father's public persona and his private shame. In that moment, the foundation of Nate's world, the idea of his father as a stable, knowable authority, collapsed. The man who was supposed to teach him how to be a man was, in the boy's eyes, a hypocrite and a liar. But more terrifyingly, Cal's secret represented a chaotic, uncontrolled vulnerability, a form of desire that, in the harsh hierarchy of the Jacobs household, meant weakness. Nate's young mind, seeking to make sense of this trauma, likely made a child's brutal calculation. His father's public strength kept the family safe and respected, while his private weakness threatened to destroy it all. To survive this emotional hurricane, Nate made a fateful choice. He would reject and violently suppress everything his father was in secret, and he would embrace and amplify the harsh, controlling, aggressive parts of his father's public mask. This is the birth of identified aggression. Unable to process the trauma of his father's betrayal, Nate identifies with the aggressor, Cal, the source of his pain. He decides that the only way to never be a victim, to never be as vulnerable and weak as his secret father, is to become the most powerful, controlled, and frightening person in any room. He becomes a prison guard, but the first prisoner he takes is himself. So, Nate builds an armor of hyper-masculinity. He sculpts his body into a weapon through obsessive training. He dominates on the football field. He controls his girlfriend, Maddie, with a chilling mix of possessive affection and terrifying rage. He manipulates everyone around him, Jules, Fezco, Tyler, through intimidation, blackmail, and physical force. Every interaction is a power play. This is not authentic confidence. It is a desperate performance. Inside this armored shell is still that terrified little boy who saw something he couldn't understand, who feels constantly on the brink of his family's facade cracking open and revealing the humiliating truth. His aggression is a preemptive strike against that feeling. If he controls everyone and everything, nothing can surprise him. No secret can shock him. No vulnerability can be used against him. His hatred for his father's secret desires becomes a hatred for anything he perceives as weak or fluid, especially in sexuality and gender. His cruel treatment of Jules, a transgender girl, is a direct reflection of this. In her, he sees the kind of authentic, complex identity that his father hid and that he himself has violently buried. She represents the truth he is at war with, so he must destroy her to quiet the panic inside himself. His relationship with Cassie is another attempt at this control, choosing a woman he sees as pliable and desperate for love, someone he believes he can shape into a perfect, submissive prop for his performance of normalcy, a stark contrast to the strong-willed Maddie and the authentic Jules. The most devastating scenes between Nate and Cal are not the shouting matches, but the quiet ones that reveal this twisted inheritance. When Cole tries to give Nate a pathetic, dishonest speech about masculinity after his own secrets are exposed, Nate doesn't reject the lesson. He embodies a corrupted, extreme version of it. He tells his father, with cold precision, that his mistake wasn't being with men, but being weak, getting caught, failing to maintain absolute control. Nate has absorbed the core sickness, the belief that the image is everything, and that any cost is worth maintaining it. He has become a more efficient, more ruthless, and more conscious version of his father's pathology. Cal was a conflicted man, torn between his desires and his shame, acting out in hidden moments. Nate, having identified with the aggressor, feels no such conflict. He has weaponized the shame and turned it outward. His aggression is the logical, horrifying endpoint of his father's lies. In a terrible irony, Nate is the son Cal's false persona demanded, a pure, violent, unfeeling avatar of control, devoid of the messy humanity that Cal himself could never fully erase. The tragedy of Nate Jacobs is that he is both a monster and a victim, a perpetrator and a prisoner. His psychology is a blueprint of how trauma, especially childhood trauma inflicted by a primary caregiver, can rewire a person. He is not simply a bad kid. He is a system of defense mechanisms made flesh. Every cruel word, every threatening text, every clenched fist is a scream from that little boy in the hallway, trying to build a fortress strong enough to keep the chaos out. But the chaos is already inside, because the blueprint for the fortress came from the very source of the storm. His aggression is identified. It is his father's, digested and regurgitated as something even more destructive. He fights a war on two fronts, against the world he must dominate, and against the terrified, confused child within who knows the entire performance is a lie. Whether Nate can ever break this cycle is the central question of his character. It would require him to do the one thing his entire being is constructed to avoid: to be vulnerable, to admit weakness, to face the profound pain of his childhood without the armor of aggression. It would require him to stop being his father's son, in both the secret and the public sense, and to finally, agonizingly, begin the work of becoming himself. Until then, he remains trapped in the feedback loop of identified aggression, endlessly replaying his father's violence, ensuring that the damage of one generation becomes the devastating legacy of the next, a haunting reminder that the most dangerous prisons are often the ones we build inside ourselves from the rubble of our parents' mistakes.